Hello everyone and welcome to Talking Business with me, Danny Pardo. Today we're chatting with Ebony, the co-founder and head of marketing over at Formy Books, an independent publishing organisation that's celebrating black culture in children's literature by encompassing everybody in the publishing sphere. So, without further ado, let's talk business with Ebony. Hello everyone and welcome to Talking Business with me, Danny Pardo. We're chatting to Ebony today. Hello Ebony, how are you?
Hello, I'm well, thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I don't want to talk too much about you because I think the best person to talk about you is you. So let's get straight into it then, shall we? Who are we chatting to today? Who is Ebony?
It's funny, isn't it? Because that's such a difficult question when you try to answer it. But so I'm co-founder of Formy Books. We're an indie publisher and we're focused on children's picture books primarily, but essentially we care about amplifying Black representation inside and outside the book. So Black illustrators and writers, and also Black protagonists and positive representation inside the books. I'm also a sales director. So I have a sales job, a day job as well, and I'm a mum of three. So it's quite busy in the land of Ebony.
Just quite busy. Not, yeah, I'm sure there's other words you could use, but thanks for keeping it PG. I appreciate it. Yeah, quite busy. Yeah, I imagine is an understatement. My word. Let's talk about Formy Books in just a few minutes' time. But before we get to that, I mean, how did you get to here then? So, sales director, head of marketing, founder of a publishing company, and a mum of three. How does that happen?
So I've worked in sales for the past kind of 14, 15 years. So sales was a job that I just kind of fell into. And actually, speaking to people in the industry, sales is never something that we all decide that, oh, I really want to work in sales. You just kind of fall into it and stay for numerous reasons. And I'm no different to that. So when I was at college, I mean, I'm going to be showing my age now, but I did I believe it was GNVQ, business studies.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
You're showing my age as well.
Yeah,
So let's be in it together. GNVQ here as well. Yeah.
Yep. Alongside an A level, and then continued that. So I did business as GNVQ and continued that. I did like a joint degree, so business studies and also sociology at uni. And then I'd worked retail and waitressing and bartending, which essentially is sales as well. It's an extension. You're always trying to, upsell the side, upsell the better liquor, and then just kind of fell into my first sales job, and it went from there. So I've been in sales for about 14, 15 years now. I've worked in many different industry verticals. And last year, my partner and I, founded Formy Books, just based on what we felt was lacking in the industry, in the children's publishing industry. So it was completely organic how it happened, but I was able to transfer a lot of my skills that I have from my career into Formy Books. So I suppose that's how the journey happened.
Yeah. So what was lacking? Was there a light bulb moment where you thought? I mean, obviously the what's lacking, maybe to rephrase the question, is pretty obvious. But was there a light bulb moment where you thought we have to do something about this, or did that kind of come in over a couple of years, or was it just like a random conversation on a Tuesday night or something? I mean, how did that kind of process happen?
So we'll have to go back a little bit, but I've been a parent for 10 years, and it's always been an issue to find accurate representation within children's picture books, especially. So something where I felt that my daughter or myself or our family was represented, there's not a lot there. At the beginning of last year, my partner Curtis, he actually wrote a picture book, published a picture book called Later as a surprise. So the book was written as a surprise to me and the children. So I didn't actually find out about it until later on. So he'd sourced the illustrator. And again, he'd done that off the back of just a lack of representation. He couldn't find his family and his family dynamic represented in children's picture books. So on one hand, we have the Afro-Caribbean representation, just wasn't there. And on the other, a stay-at-home dad with a mum that goes to work. So that kind of switch up of traditional gender roles as well. When you combine the two together, that intersection, there just wasn't books, wasn't available. So when I talk about lack of representation, it's, you know, there are many different levels to it. So he created this picture book, and at first he was only going to print copies for us and for kind of extended family. When I saw the book, I said no. My kind of commercial hat came on, and I was like, "This is beautiful, and no, we need to make this available." That's kind of where it went, where it began. So we started on a small scale, and we just offered the book via DM on social media. So we're like, if anyone's interested, just let us know. We'll sell it. They sold out. We printed some more copies. They sold out, and then we really had to take a look at what we were doing, because there was obviously, it wasn't just us that was feeling that there was a lack. In the meantime, I'm a stats person. I enjoy learning industries. That's kind of what I've done with my career. So as I said, I've changed verticals quite a few times and really have to learn an industry quite quickly. And so I've been studying publishing and children's literature, especially, alongside what we were doing, and could see that it wasn't just a feeling from us. This was real. There was a complete lack of representation. So we retrospectively went back and created a Kickstarter to publish more copies of the book. Quite unusual, because usually the Kickstarters are done to pay for the illustrator, for the whole creation of the book and the printing. We'd already done all of that. It was formatted, it was ready to print. We just wanted to be able to print in bulk, to be more competitive, and to try and, you know, have partnerships with like indie stores and things like that, so that the book can get into more hands. The first Kickstarter was really successful. So we went away again, and we decided that we would form Formy Books. So it was completely organic. There was no one light bulb moment, I think, to answer your question. But there was lots of different moments that led up to this is going to be.
And how long ago was that then? When was that first book kind of handed over to your children by your partner? When is that?
That was
years or?
Like February last year.
Wow.
So this has been really this has been really quick. So it was around about February. We just had like later year anniversaries in April, I think. So it wasn't a huge amount of time ago. So we've done a lot within a year. Probably taken a lot on. But that's the origin story.
That's brilliant. I mean, with regards to representation, so I mean, me and my wife, we watch TV, we read books, and we've got a daughter ourselves, and we've spotted that as well, as white middle class people that we are. And then every now and again, we'll watch TV and we'll go, oh look, there's lots of different cultures represented. There's lots of different sexualities represented. There's lots of different body types and people's weights and things like that represented. And we watch it and go, see, it's not that difficult. And to us, we're like the consumers of it. How difficult is it to write the books and things you're doing? And why has nobody done it before?
I don't know. And I spoke, I was on a Zoom meeting, kind of a webinar about this recently, and I don't think it's not individual faults and it's not individual errors, it's systemic. So I think there are lots of people in the industry. You and I met on social media, and people wanting to connect, and there are lots of people that really want to increase representation, and that's throughout. That's not just Black representation, LGBTQ plus representation, more working class representation, for disability. So there are lots of people individually that want to make changes and that are trying to make changes, but the industry is very slow, reluctant to make a change on a whole basis.
And when you've done something the same way for so long, then it is hard to say, well, we should change, because I from the business side of you can look at it as but what we're doing makes money, and there is the risks involved, but it's got to be more than that now. Surely it's got to be more than just, you are making money, but there's got to be something bigger.
And I think that's what it is, and I think that's why people are now, they're asking the questions louder. You're definitely right, you've hit the nail on the head. It's money. it's the commercial value of the books, and it's who the perceived audience of the books are. And that has always been white middle class and still is. And I think that they need to make changes with who they're viewing their audience from. But not only that, the gatekeepers of the industry as well, still white middle class. So when you add all of these factors in, then, you know, the representation is not only lacking, but then when we do get the representation, is it accurate? Because everyone making the decisions behind the scene isn't from those communities. And for us, you know, specifically, we're talking Black Caribbean representation, but also the marginalized identities that fall within that. So working class, we know that publishing has a real issue with middle class. You know, if you look at the salaries, for example, you know, you really can't start on starting salaries and it's very London centric.
Yeah.
You know, if you're paying £20,000 in London, unless you have a fallback, you're living with your parents, there's some kind of wealth there. It's just not happening. You know, it's just not. So we know that there's a middle class issue, and we know that there's this lens. And so what happens is that it means that there is a huge demographic, huge population that's not being represented accurately within the books that they're reading, and children, and that's what we're concerned about. If we look at, for example, again, things are quite London centric. So if we think about when we do see more working class representation attempted in children's picture books, it might be a tower block. Again, that's very London centric. I'm from the Midlands, and there aren't very many tower blocks. I grew up on a council estate. It wasn't in a tower block. So, you know, it's about having, it's not just about the diversity inside the book. You need to have the diversity in publishing, in the industry, and creating the books, or it's just not going to be accurate representation. It's going to be what that middle class white lens is viewing the representation as. So how do we think the Caribbean is? How do we think working class life is? And that's what we're trying to do. So that's our little niche, and that's what we want to do. We want to create books by creators that share an identity with the protagonists in the book. And yeah, that's what we're focused on at the moment.
And obviously, you know, you've made a good point there that you can presume if you just pick up a book, oh, it's just the author. This is all the author. Nobody else has had input. Yeah, there's other people, you know, maybe we had to print it and publish it and stuff, but it's 99.9% the author. And I think that it gets lost a bit, that there's a lot more people in that kind of chain to somebody going, I've got an idea for a book, and then it's in somebody's hand. And you're talking there about the importance of having a representation throughout that. I mean, during that process, then, have you had issues or opposition to your setting up of Formy Books and the last year or so? Or has it been a nice kind of smooth ride that everybody's been behind you and something different? Or is it different because you're indie?
Yeah, I would say it's been supportive. That might not necessarily be something that's going to stay the same. I'm sure as we'll grow, things might change. But on the whole, the community, and when I say the community, I speak quite big, so it might be our direct community and also the community as a whole, have been really supportive. And I think that's because, as I said a few minutes ago, people do recognize that, you know, you can't ignore these stats. You can't look at these stats and say, you know, we look at the Book Trust Represents report on people of color creating children's books in the UK, and they use the catch-all people of color. But when you drill down into Black creators, there were 20. Right. Within 2019, there were 20. You can't look at those stats and say there's absolutely no defending them. So
no, you can't.
No. And so when you look at Black British, there were 20 creators. So when you take out the US, it's very US centric. And then we don't know how many of those were actually famous, because we know that celebrity authors and creators make up those stats. So you can't look at them. So I think everyone acknowledges and agrees with the fact that we have to make changes. There isn't the representation. There's an issue there. When you then divide up the catch-all of BAME or POC, again, the stats are dire. So we've had support. It's very supportive, but there are a lot of hurdles with publishing. As I said, I have worked in a lot of industries, and I'm talking everything from medical devices to oil and gas and nuclear energy.
Wow.
And
Pretty
yeah, there are lots of hurdles,
Yeah.
some of which are very unnecessary, in my opinion, within publishing. A lot of gatekeepers, a lot of gates, and so it just makes everything unnecessarily difficult. And so having to navigate that around that, I think, is what is most difficult. But in terms of support, we haven't received pushback. What, the only things I would say is on some of the platforms, social media platforms, so primarily Facebook, we do receive quite negative comments on our
I wish I could.
occasionally.
I wish I could say I was surprised by that, but unfortunately, I'm not.
No, and so it's expected, but it does become quite demoralizing when you're constantly having to delete comments that are, really offensive or quite derogatory.
So what does that do? Is that motivating you more, or is that kind of going, oh gosh, this is pretty heavy going, I think I'll just stick to sales?
No, it motivates me more. I'm quite competitive. I'm definitely tenacious, so it just motivates me more. And for every platform like Facebook, you have Twitter, which has been a phenomenal platform for us, along with Instagram, actually. And we've had a lot of support from individuals and from companies and community organizations. So it's been a really positive experience.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear that the positives outweigh the negatives by quite a lot, by the sounds of it. So, I mean, who are you selling to? Are you getting these books into schools yet, or is this still down to people's kind of personal choice to go out and seek and find these books at our bookstores?
So that's been quite a pivot recently in terms of education into schools. So what we're finding, since we focused on Twitter, schools is definitely a big area for us. My mother-in-law works in childcare. She works in early years. She has done for the last 30 years. So she's, I suppose, kind of a consultant for us as well. And in terms of early years and like reception classes, we've been finding that later has been really popular there. So that's definitely a push at the moment. Again, that wasn't something that we knew really until Twitter. We were always kind of learning as we go along. But it's definitely something that teachers have been interested in actively seeking. We've run a lot of competitions for schools to win the books. So we've given quite a lot away. Also in terms of yoga teachers as well. So yoga classes for children, that's an area for us as well at the moment. But yes, word of mouth is huge for us. So people seeking out the book because of reviews on social media, because of people seeking it out, because of trying to find authentic voices, I think. So there's been quite a pivot to people actually checking who's behind the books that they're reading. So there was a huge push to diversify bookshelves, which is great. We all need to diversify our bookshelves, but there's a worry that sometimes diversifying just means adding non-white characters, and that's not what it means, because diversity means a lot, different things to different people.
Have you seen that? Have you felt that it's kind of what me and my wife have described as like a tick box exercise, but we have to have one of each type of disability or race or sexual orientation, etc. We have to have one of each, and then we've done our bit. But then we've
occasionally, and I don't think there's any bad intentions behind it. What I think is that that's the thing that people can control. So that this is the bit that I can do, and they really try to do it, which is fantastic. But the problem is then who's feeding you the resources that you're buying these books from. And so, what we encourage is for people to actually look at the lists that are being created, if that's where you're buying your books from, based on who is it that's creating. Is it a member of that community that you're buying these books based on? Because for me, if I'm going to buy books from a community that I'm not a part of, and I really want to look at authentic voices, I'm going to make sure that the people recommending those books are part of that community. Likewise, I'm going to try really hard to make sure that the creators of the book are as well. It doesn't mean that all books created by members of the same community are going to be excellent, but as a non-member of those communities, it's something that I can do to try and ensure. So I can look around and make sure the recommendations have come from a place where it's not just, well, here's a book that features and it's kind of been included on a list. So that's something that I try and do as a parent.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I think there's more of a move in that direction at the moment as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, with Formy Books being so kind of prevalent in today's society, and the important conversations that we're finally starting to have, I use the word starting as a key point here. Is this something, do you think, that could have been popular 10, 20 years ago, but nobody did it because the climate wasn't right, or society wasn't right? Or I hate to use the word society wasn't ready, like we weren't ready to treat people equally and learn about each other. But do you think that, 10, 20 years ago, you could be doing what you're doing now? Sorry to put you on the spot there.
It's just a difficult one, because there are always people in each generation that have tried. And just because something hasn't been hugely successful doesn't mean there hasn't been the effort behind it. So I think it would be remiss of me to say that no, it couldn't have, because I may not be clued up on all the history, and there may well have been plenty of other people that have tried to do exactly the same thing. And maybe it was successful, because again, it depends on what the view of success is. Was it just a commercial view of success? Was it maybe to get books into schools? Maybe it was, that handful of children had that representation. So it depends on what we're looking at in terms of success, and that's not always commercial. But when I think back to 20 years ago, and I was late teens, then I do think there was, I suppose, more of a view that, well, in this country especially, we're more harmonic. Harmonics, should I say. The things that happen maybe in the US don't necessarily happen here. And I think that veil's been lifted. I think that, it's easy to see now that actually, no, we do suffer microaggressions, we do suffer racism. Racism is institutionalized. These are just kind of, I suppose, lies that we've been fed. So I think that we're under that veil now, and it's easier for people to admit to themselves that no, we have an issue here and we need to work around it, whereas before maybe it was a little bit more cloak and dagger, maybe.
No, I see where you're coming from, and it's a journey that we're all on some way, shape, or form. But for me and my, again, to paraphrase me and my wife, we're definitely we're doing our best to kind of learn and read, and every now and again we'll see or read something and go, did you know this? And it'll just completely blow our minds a little bit. I was talking to or I was in a webinar with some Australian educators the other day, and they were saying how the Dewey Decimal System for the Aboriginal people put their books into the category of myths and legends, Australian myths and legends, like the Aboriginal people didn't even exist, that they were as myths and a legend, like a wizard or a dragon would be, on that par with them. And for me to go, oh, wait a minute, this isn't just America. I mean, it's not just the UK, but there's Australia as well. And I'm learning all about this as well. It's such a eye-opening, mind-blowing experience. That, and I'm 41. I thought I was all set and I knew what was going on in the world. Turns out I don't.
Same. It's learning for all of us. We're continuously learning.
We have to be open-minded, and it's hard, isn't it, to tell you've got to read, you've got to learn, you've got to experience and talk to people and find out what's going on. So I mean, with looking at the past of Formy Books, then I mean, what's next then? Obviously you don't need to give too many secrets away. I don't want to completely ruin your business plan if somebody listens to it and copy it. But what's next for you? I mean, just over 18 months ago it didn't even exist. Now you've got this following and the creators and a real sense of purpose that will make a difference. What about next 18 months then? What's going on next?
We ran the Kickstarter last year for later, but then a few months later we ran a second Kickstarter, which I don't know what was going on, but because they're
lots
really
of Kickstarters. Is that the short answer?
But we decided to run a Kickstarter basically to fund the first year of our publishing book. So we ran a Kickstarter, which was quite, I suppose. it hadn't really been done before, from what we could see here, but we ran the Kickstarter for 4 picture books to be published this year.
Okay.
And that was successful. So we were all in. So those books are going to be coming out between August and October, November. So there are 4 picture books that were funded by the Kickstarter, and that will really launch us, because at the moment, although we have these books in the works, we still only have 1 book that's out in the world.
Right.
But by the end of this year, there will be 5 books that are out in the world, and we've also opened up for submissions as well, which is really exciting. So we've opened up for submissions. We're looking for writers for picture books and for middle grade books, and writers especially from underrepresented communities. So we'll see what happens with that. But we are going to be continuing in the same vein as this year, and definitely publishing at least the same amount of picture books again. So
well, that's great. So growth is in the book. Then you're ready to rock and roll with that, which is great to hear. It's great.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think let's cross everything that we can that you can do that. That sounds really exciting. Where do we find out more about you then? I mean, where's your website, your Instagrams, all that stuff? What are we searching for, and all those kind of things?
So all of our social media is Formy_books. So at Formy_books, and our website is formybooks.com. So you can find out absolutely everything. Social media is a great place to start, because you can really see just about our passions, what we're interested in. Again, we're looking for submissions as well. So I would encourage writers from underrepresented backgrounds that perhaps think that there isn't a place for their voice within publishing, to reach out, because they're the voices that we want to hear, the ones that aren't currently, you know, being told, or think that there isn't a foot in the door for them within publishing.
Yeah, and what a great opportunity you're giving as well, not just to the readers of your books, but to the creators who wouldn't necessarily think that this is an industry that they might succeed in. So that's great. You're doing it. And who thought, you know, I suppose we thought, oh, just write a book, it's all good, you know. Yeah, just write a book and print it. It'll be fine. You know, the impact that has is huge, isn't it? You know, on so many levels, and it's great that you're kind of giving that back to a variety of communities. So thank you so much. I'm going to ask you one more question, if that's all right.
Okay, is this going to be a hard one?
Yeah, it is. I haven't prepped you for this or anything. So more personal now, not too personal, but you know, about you. If you could go back to 17, 18, yeah, I know. I've already lost you, haven't I? It's your connection phasing out here. I can feel it. If you could go back to 17, 18-year-old Ebony and give yourself a little bit of advice that you wish somebody had given you, and you took it on and stuck with it maybe as a mantra, what would that advice for 17, 18-year-old Ebony be?
I definitely, that's a really hard one. One of the pieces of advice that I wish that I'd had, or just known really, was that I am actually quite a creative person, and I would have always described myself as not creative, because my brain works slightly differently. I have lots of ideas, but they're all kind of here. But that's fine. Everyone works in different ways. So I just kind of ignored my creativity before, because it didn't seem to be standard. So I just think the piece of advice would be embrace your differences. Definitely.
Nice.
That would be it.
We all have them. So
yeah, we do.
Yeah, we all have them, whatever they are. So yeah, embrace your differences. I like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking the time to chat as well. You know, we both know that this has taken a couple of months to organise with our lives and the world that it is. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat. And I wish you all the very best for Formy Books. And I suppose about get on your website and buy stuff.
Yes, definitely buy.
Yeah, how can I do all this and then say, oh, I'm not letting my 6-year-old read that? So I'm going to be a man of my word, and I'll see you on your purchases page at some point. So, but no, thank you very much. Stay on the line for just a second. We'll say a cheerio. But for now, I'll say thank you, and thank you very much for talking business with me. Thank you, and bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you very much, Ebony, for taking the time to chat and for sharing your insights and for what you're doing with Formy Books. I really do wish you all the best and all the success in the world for the next stages of your brilliant organisation. So thank you, really appreciate it. And for everybody else watching and listening, then thank you very much for tuning in. Really appreciate it if you could share, like, rate, review, subscribe, and do all those fun things on YouTube and your podcast providers, wherever it is that you are listening. And you can say hi on all the social medias by looking for Pardo's Business, because that's me. And until next time, thank you very much. Cheerio.